Yo, welcome back to the channel. Just come back from work recently. We've got a pull day today, back and biceps. I'll be going over the back portion of it in detail, showing you what I do, why I do it, and certain techniques and stuff like that. But first, I have my pre-workout, so I'll show you what that is. That is 4 whole eggs, 90 grams of turkey, 100 grams of spinach, 10 grams of butter on top of a New York bagel, and some pink Himalayan sea salt in there as well. So we'll take this down, digest it for a little bit, map out my workout, write my logbook, and we'll be training in about an hour 15. So we'll get to work. Let's get it. So I'm starting off with what I feel like is the king of upper back movements, the chest support T-bar row. Now, upper back is something I feel like I've really neglected over the years. It's easy for people to come into a back workout and just think lats, but the upper back is very important as well. So I start my workout with this when I'm fresh. So 2 working sets here. And what I love about this movement is that your chest is supported, so you're really just locked in, and all you have to worry about is pulling. Technique wise, a lot of people like to just treat this as a lat movement. I'm not really trying to arch my back here. The goal is to pull up and out. It's all about scapular retraction here. So I kind of envision myself pulling up, my elbows out, and I envision my elbows wrapping round my back. So in terms of rep ranges for this particular movement, my top set is anywhere from 8 to 10 reps. With my back off sets, let's take it, the rep range is a little bit higher. So that's anywhere between 12 to 15. It looks like I got 16 on this back off set, which is 1 more than last week. So some good progression there. So now I move on to another bread and butter movement, the trusty old one-arm dumbbell row. I've been doing these since I can remember, since I first started training years and years ago. One-arm dumbbell rows, bent over barbell rows, and T-bar rows have always been a staple in my training since day one. And I feel like they are the number one factors in me, growing my back, thickness and width wise. A lot of people tend to ask me, Jordan, what part of the back is the dumbbell row hitting? And I always tell them this is a full back movement, and I explain why. Obviously, when you're pulling up into the side, you're going to get some lat involvement. The way I angle the dumbbell in, the way my elbows flare out, you get some upper back stimulation as well. And obviously being bent over, it being a spinal kind of a loading movement, you're getting some erector kind of stimulation there as well. So I see this as a full back movement. Upper back stimulation, lat stimulation, and erector stimulation as well. As always with my back offsets, the weight is a little lighter here. And I use this as an opportunity to kind of get some higher reps in and really pump that back full of blood. I feel like when it comes to the machine versus free weights debate, there's a real disconnect there now. In 2022, we have so many great machines to use. Cybex, Hammer Strength, and even the new awesome Prime stuff. And it can really lock yourself in and focus on that back. But I feel like a lot of people just don't do these kind of spinal loading movements, such as dumbbell rows, barbell rows, T-bar rows, simply because they're just too hard. I make it my rule to keep at least 1 spinal loading movement within my back routine, just from a skill standpoint. I also just feel like they just yield so many great results. So now I move on to the neutral grip machine row. This was literally put in my routine the other week. This video you're watching is literally me doing it for the first time in this rotation. So still getting a feel for the movement, still getting a feel for the range of motion. But it feels really, really good actually. I see this as not just an upper back exercise. Obviously the way my elbows and the grip I'm getting more lat stimulation as well. But I see this as a kind of a mix of both upper back and lats. Obviously my elbows are close to my body, but they're not locked in completely. So I'm still getting some upper back stimulation as well. So I like seeing this movement as a hybrid of both upper back and lats. What I love about this movement, like I said before with the chest supported T-bar rows, that you're just locked in. Your chest is locked in. You have to worry about balancing or stabilizing yourself. All you have to worry about is pulling in. I'll be honest, the top sets and back off sets felt very, very easy. But like I said, I'm just getting used to this movement. I haven't done this movement in a while. So just getting used to the groove and the range of motion, how it feels. But I'll definitely up the weight next session. Like I've always said, when you're adding a new movement into the routine, just spend a couple of weeks getting that skill and execution down. Once you've nailed that, then you can go full force and attack progression. Okay, so I move on to the only vertical movement I do in my routine, the lat pull down. And notice I said lat pull down. This is what you call a lat pull down because it is actually stimulating the lats. You see a lot of people doing wide overhand grip pull downs, thinking they'll get wider lats from that, but that's not the case. You look at elbow path, arm alignment, the way the elbows flare out, you're just pretty much hitting upper back there. A lot of upper back, rear delts, and rhomboids. This shoulder width neutral grip you see me using here, I feel personally is the best way to stimulate lats all the way from the top down to the insertion point. The problem with the V-bar grip is that you're kind of limited by your chest in terms of range of motion. With this neutral grip, this shoulder width grip, you don't have that problem. It allows your elbows to travel all the way down to the side of your body and hit that lat right at the insertion. So the goal here is to shorten my lat as much as possible. When I say shorten the lat, it means get that lat shortened, so bringing that elbow down as far as possible. You can see I'm not really arching my back here. A lot of people like to exaggerate the arch because apparently that stimulates the lats, apparently. I like to keep my body in a fixed position, and the technique here is kind of pulling down, almost just tucking in, really tucking my elbows in and bringing it down as far as I possibly can. I feel there's like a real disconnect in terms of distinguishing the difference between upper back and lat training. And I feel like when people really understand that distinction and what the differences are, they can really start making progress in the lats and in the upper back as well. Okay, so now I move on to the last back movement within my routine. I call this the one arm underhand row lat bias. And I'll explain why it is a lat bias. So like I said before, when you're trying to target lats and upper back, it's all about arm placement and elbow arrangement as well. As you can see with this, I'm trying to keep my elbows tucked in as much as I can, and really just pull it in and shorten that lat. When it comes to back training, a lot of people have said over the years, it's all about range of motion, getting a full range of motion. But I feel like when it comes to certain movements, that doesn't really apply, especially lat biased movements. I feel like with these lat bias movements, it's all about just finding that groove and keeping in a locked position. Overextend too much and you lose that lat connection and your upper back takes over. So it's a very short range of motion with these lat bias movements, just to keep constant tension on the lats. Again, like with the neutral grip seated row, this is my first time doing this variation of this movement within my routine. So like I said, just getting used to the groove and the range of motion and the way it feels. But really, really feels good, it's a good finisher. Definitely will be keeping this in there. I'm looking forward to progressing. Some good numbers on there as well. So I normally throw in the Pec Deck at the end after back. Over the years I've done many variations of rear delt exercises, bent over dumbbell rear flies, I've done face pulls, but nothing really connects my rear delts like the reverse Pec Deck. It just feels the best for me. It really allows me to lock myself in and just focus on stimulating those rear delts. One of the only exercises in fact to actually do more than 2 working sets. I'm doing 3 working sets here. I feel like smaller muscle groups like rear delts, side delts, calves can take a bit more of a beating, so 3 sets is kind of my magic kind of number here. 15 to 20 reps and that is me done. Okay, so that was pretty much a typical pull day for me. I just want to clear up a misconception I feel like a lot of people tend to run with when it comes to back training. And that's the whole, rows over thickness and vertical movements like pull downs over width. I really don't subscribe to this theory at all. I feel like whatever back movement you're doing is going to add thickness and it's going to add width. I just pick the movements I can shift the most weight with, which happens to be rows. So that's why you'll see my routine is mostly rows. When I'm doing old school movements like dumbbell rows and bent over rows, overall my back's going to get thicker. When I change my arm and overall elbow alignment to make a more lat biased row, then my lats will get wider as well. And the proof is pretty much in the pudding. I do 1 vertical movement in the entirety of my back workout. My back isn't exactly, lacking width. And I also want to talk about finding your groove when it comes to back training, specifically form and execution. So typically you have 2 camps. You have the camp that's super strict, everything's got to be slow, controlled and squeezed. And you have the other camp, which is, having a bit more body language, a bit more momentum when it comes to using the weights. Both ways of training have their pros and cons. I would say the advantage of super strict form is that you know exactly what part of the back you're training and really lock into what you're doing. But I feel like the drawback of super strict training in terms of form is that you'll eventually find a sticking point where it'll be hard to kind of progress the poundages. The advantage of using, you know, a bit more sloppier form is that you could lift heavy weights, which in turn means you can build more muscle. The downside of that though is that you start to recruit other muscles that you don't really want to use. So for example, you could load up a T-bar row, 6 plates, you know, row it back and forth, but you're not just going to be training your back, you know, you're going to be training your legs, and it'll be like a semi-sumo deadlift as well. I personally like to find a happy medium, especially when it comes to those kind of hip hinge, old school movements like barbell rows and dumbbell rows. I'm all about controlling the weight and not letting the weight control me. But if you look at some of the best backs in the world, like Jay, Ronnie, Kai Green, a lot of them had a lot of body language when it comes to those kind of power movements. And I feel like when it comes to those old school kind of spinal loading movements, you're not just trying to hit like one part of the back, those are kind of full back movements. So when I'm hitting failure and trying to eke a few more reps out, I feel like, you know, having a bit body language really helps me. And I've seen some really good back growth from doing that. When it comes to pull downs, I think it's a different story. When it comes to lat pull downs, I feel like that's the movement where the lats really need to be felt, and that's where, you know, technique comes in. There's no type of momentum or swinging when I do pull downs. You know, I'm really trying to just lock it in and get those lats stimulated. So let me know down in the comments below how you like to train back. Are you kind of more super strict, more sloppier, or in between like me? Like, comment, subscribe, and notifications on if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.